So Kristin,
Hi.
hey. Thank you so much for being here this
Thank you
morning.
for having me. I was telling her when I first came in, the last time I was in this physical space, I was in tears because I needed SBDC so very badly. And it's wild to be the event this time,
Yeah.
like the person that you're speaking to as a success story, because it's been like 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was like rock bottom to now, which is amazing. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
I love
I'm
milestones.
getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
No, thanks for being here this
Absolutely.
morning. Yeah. So let's jump in. So you're the founder of the Pad Climbing.
One of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it started out as a nonprofit. No, actually, just started out totally off the books, like secret, in a storage unit with a couple other people, including who is now my husband, and they started it. And it was called Slow Op, and that was 22 years ago. And I came in about a year later, and then I have the small business background working with women who run businesses. So I kind of naturally started to take it over. So my husband and I founded the for-profit in 2017 in order to go build the large gym we have here today and wound down the nonprofit. So I am one of the founders, and I like to make sure I spread the love.
Oh, yeah. So your husband's your co-founder, basically.
He is, yes.
Do you have other co-founders on the team?
Not on the team, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like they're investors or partners in some way, but not.
Okay. Yeah. And what prompted the move from the nonprofit to the for-profit? Like what was going on there?
So
what was that?
naturally, it turns out, like when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a business owner, and I didn't know what that looked like. My dad ran a construction firm, but hated it and quit doing that and worked for construction firms instead. And I went to school for animal science, and I just happened to work for women entrepreneurs, and I like watched them all the time. So basically, we just kind of did stuff, and I never thought about this. And this is one of my like big speeches I give whenever I do public speaking, where people say you have to have a 5-year plan. We literally just kind of did stuff, and it's insane that like I have just brought on a COO who's like top tech firm person from San Francisco who just needed to like stop stressing out all day and start come work for us. So this woman who went to, I can't remember, some really big East Coast university that we all know and like worked in New York City and then moved to San Francisco is now on the same playing field as I did when I was just like messing around with this. So anyway, we just kept getting better at it. And we brought this consultant in. He was going to help us with what's called route setting. It's where you put the plastic holds on the walls. And he was like, I got consultants that have a lot of money that I would have told to come here because you guys have made a market. But now they know you guys are cool. I won't do that. And we freaked out, right? Because we were like, oh no, like we did build something cool, but we have no access to money. So we ended up expanding to another location down in Santa Maria. That ultimately failed during COVID. But while we did that, somebody was snooping around here looking for a climbing gym space. And we'd heard about it. We always hear about it. And suddenly it got really serious. We got into this crazy bidding war, and like we were like, how are we going to do this? And we go to the banks, and they're like, you're a nonprofit. We're not loaning you money. So we had to transition from for-profit to nonprofit in order to get the capital necessary to be able to compete with a real climbing gym and not a cute like homespun. We built it ourselves, kind of a wall.
Okay.
And so that's what happened.
How did that? So a lot of our clients do struggle with that, lining up bank loans and so on and so forth. So how did that go? Because you had been a nonprofit, you didn't have the for-profit 2-year history of revenue, and so how did you manage that?
Very old person, and we predate the word crowdfunding, but we crowdfunded. Okay. I'm actually in a best-selling book by Chris Gillibu. I don't know how to say his last name, called The $100 Startup. And basically, we started out like these founders. We had a storage unit on Alamo self-storage off Tank Farm, and people put some money in to build it, and it was like, and we had like mattresses on the ground. And then as we made a little more money, we had like nice pads, and then we got kicked out. And then we asked those same people who now trusted us to give us money. So they gave us some money, and we built a smaller one. And now everybody liked how it was running. It got so popular that we either had to shut it down or we needed to like limit who came. And then the board was like, we'll give you a little bit of money. And once you give somebody money to do something.
This is the board of your nonprofit.
Of the nonprofit. Once you give somebody some money to do something, even if it's nothing, it suddenly becomes a priority. So we went all in once that happened, and we kept improving. Like we rebuild the structure because we didn't like it. And people watched us, and they would loan us money, and then we would pay them back on time, and then they would get something better. And then we kept doing that until this last one when we went for profit. But by that point, we needed money, and we had all the connections because we loaned, I think the first build we had to borrow 20,000, and the next was 70, and then the final one was like 170.
Wow.
And by that point, that was all just people repaying money to us, or like us repaying them. And when we went for profit at that point, you know, we had enough people who had also come up with us, who were no longer like college students, but were doing better while we were like struggle bus and doing this weird thing. So they had all this money at this point to able to help us seed this one.
So you crowdfunded at the start. You didn't go straight to the bank.
No, you've got to, what I always say is you've got to start, like I do a lot of work with small business advocacy, and like people are always like, I can't find capital. And I was like, the thing is you got to start small and you got to ask for help. And nobody wants to ask for help. You hear these stories about bootstrapping, but all those people that are really successful, they had help. Like I get asked all the time, like, do you have family money? Is that how you do that? I'm like, oh, no, I just like made friends. And like, you know, now I'm like kind of well known in the community here. And a lot of the people here have either invested in us or physically built it or like been a vendor for us. So like when we need help, if we get really scary, someone's going to loan us money because they know we're good for it. And like, that's how we have like done it through this point. And now that we're doing like capital raises, that makes a difference there because now we have this history of doing that. And we go into a community that's asked us to come there and they're like, here, have some money. So we really don't have to like struggle it. And banks are hard with climbing gyms. So at this point, we're getting to the point where we don't have to ask for banks anymore. So, but it's a process, and I just like asking for help is the key.
And it's starting small. Like I
Oh,
would
yeah.
encourage our business owners, like get a line of credit as soon as you can, even if it's 10K, and then pay it right back in if you don't need it. Like take it, pay it back just to create that history.
And I would say like the bank relationships have been okay, but it's really the people. So actually being the kind of person someone wants to invest in, even if it's a small loan, is the thing that will get you where you need to go. Because you know, the next step is not just like at this point we're maxed out. We can't get SBA loans anymore because we need more money than that. So like we've dropped that part and we need those relationships where someone's like, you know, that was a good investment and you guys are good people. I got extra money now. And like, again, I just hired some high stakes people and they're like, you got to start asking for more money now because it's much easier at this level. And I was like, what is this? Like, oh, so.
So that was back in 2018.
The for-profit transitioned. We opened the slow location in 2019, but took a couple years to do the transition.
I didn't realize it was that recent prior to COVID. And then,
Oh, no, we opened it in 2017. And then we acquired someone in 2018. I have like the dates.
So let's talk a little bit. So back then, before COVID, you were very mission driven. Can you talk about the mission and what's behind it?
Yeah. So like I said, I like animals. Like I have a little farm. I like manage my little donkey and my sheep and stuff like that. I wanted to be a vet. I don't like indoor climbing, yet I run an indoor climbing gym. I don't like bouldering, and we were the world's first nonprofit indoor bouldering gym. And so everyone's always like, why aren't you ever at the gym? We'll see you there. And it's like, I don't actually like this kind of climbing. Like I like to go out into Yosemite on the like
But you were a climber,
big stuff.
right?
I'm a climber, but there's different types of everything. Like, you know how you get your like hobby that you're a niche of? My niche is not the one I run. But what happened is that it changed my life. Like meeting these people who did this stuff, who were like radically inclusive, were like, you're not actually that good at climbing, but you're a nice person. It changed the full trajectory of my life. And like, every time we do one of these builds and we meet people, it does. Like even in Santa Maria, it was not an ideal community for that. It's just like demographically, it was just not going to work out. But the people that adopted it literally like ended up becoming like Zion guides and like going out and like seeing themselves in a totally different way. And they got partners and they got all kinds of stuff. And that's where the mix is for me, is that there's no third place anymore where people like go to a downtown and they just like meet each other or like have a square dance from like the 1800s. So we're that place now. So like if you are a 20-something or you've newly moved to town or you're looking for a business partner, or you're looking for a life partner, this is the place you can go. And like it's the only place in the entire world where you can go out, do something, fail, and everyone is just cheering you on like in the moment, like you got this, that's all right, good job. And there's no place you can go like that. So that's what drives me.
And so the mission behind that and how you that you built the company culture and the way you hire and all those things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, everything is either employee driven or it's experience driven. And you know, like one of the things I'm really proud of is the way that we do our hiring system. I got it from this online class.
Talking about it,
Katja Saramento. It's called Operation Delegation, and basically what it is it's like, look, how we apply for jobs is wrong. And we had so many bad hires in the first part of this, because I'm an English professor by trade. Like I don't know how to hire. I didn't go to B school, and I didn't have like experience doing that. I worked for small businesses. So we did a lot of mistakes. So when I got this program, basically what it is that people submit their application online. It has a code word. You have to look at the code word and fill it in. And if you don't get the code word right, and you're one of these people, it's like, what is this list? Pick that one. Then you don't make it through.
Yeah.
Then once you make it, when you do make it through, we send an assessment. And it's like write in blue, here's some really concrete questions. And then at the bottom, it says like, how long did it take you to do it? And then like put a meme so we can see your humor. And it has worked for everything. We have not made a single bad hire because people really reveal themselves. And the one thing I found is interesting is like ChatGPT is getting used a lot now.
Yes.
And I know that because I love ChatGPT, but
Yeah.
don't do it when you're applying for a job. I can read that pattern. Like I'm talking about like 6-figure salary applicants are using ChatGPT in my industry, and I know it. And I'm like, how can I ever interview someone who's going to phone that in when it should have taken a phone in if you were so good at your job to be able to type it up in like a half hour? So, I mean, I understand. So there's like all these things, but it's like that. But also at the same time, we're trying to be more inclusive. So it's like blind hiring. Don't ask for resumes. We don't ask for that. We ask later. We don't look at names. We do a lot of like really intentional work with that. And if you go to our website, people always talk to me about like, you know, your employment page is really long and really dense. It's like, you know, it's on purpose. I want to see you read that whole thing. I want to make sure that you actually cared. And I know, and like even entry-level people, obviously we don't have that kind of an expectation on them, but when people are really going, if they aren't like kind of informed by who they're talking to at that point, then it's probably not a good fit. And like everyone goes, who applies for this? And I'll get these like assessments that are like, this was kind of a waste of my time. And it'll be like, and they'll say that a lot, but then I ended like the last round of hiring for CFO, CO, COPO, the 2 different roles, both of them got over 100 applicants. And these are like Ivy League, like this one guy like took a chain we all know from like 3 locations to 300. Like I'm telling like really good people, and the ones that really get what we're doing are grateful to be working for us, really like how we're working, and like they'll get through that. And it's like one of the red flags is like, you're salty about my interesting thing and don't have that curiosity. So I'm like really trying to kind of disrupt how people do stuff because we spend all this time with these optimizing your resume for an app, and it takes us no time because it's all automated. And we know right away, like first sentence, if this person's worth reading through and interviewing. So it's stuff like that. Like, I just love efficiency.
No, you're right. And especially about ChatGPT, that's a really, like, if we can talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
But, I noticed a piece of work, and I was like, you're right. Like you can see the patterns. It doesn't feel natural. It's too much hitting all the buzzwords.
It's also like
just
5-paragraph.
like,
I'm an English professor, and I
Yeah,
know
so-
if you start with a 5-paragraph essay, we're like, this is what I'm going to do, and then this is the things. And in conclusion, I'm
Yeah.
like, either I mean, obviously ChatGPT has that pattern, or you have that pattern, but that's not the kind of communication I'm looking for in our organization. We're very informal. So if you're writing me a formal essay, even if it isn't ChatGPT, we know it's not for us. Yeah.
It's, is there any, just to wrap on that topic, do you use it as a tool in anything else?
Oh, everything. Every day,
Yeah,
like we have
yeah.
playbooks where I have a GPT programmed with the format that I want. I have a job description GPT where I'm like, this is the job we need. I need it in this racy format, and I need it all like this. And if you don't know what racy is, because you think it's like, ooh, like responsibility, accountability, consulted or informed, so you can see in your job what you're going to be responsible for. And like, we do everything in ChatGPT. I do research, we do demographic stuff. Like if we're looking for a new location, like what does this have?
Yeah.
So like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But there's times when you need to use your own voice.
Right.
And like
Right.
when you need your own expertise. We even like run, like to save money on paralegals and stuff. We run legal stuff through it first before we send it to our very
Yeah.
expensive attorney.
Totally.
So,
That's a way to
yeah.
filter a lot of things into, yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really cool. So as I said, so let's go back to the story. So
Yeah.
before COVID, you were kind of in growth mode. Talk about where you were at, and then what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
And how did you navigate that? Because most gyms shut down.
Yep.
And
Well, we
never
did
came
too.
back.
I don't know that most, which is actually really interesting.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously, for those of us back up, so we were in growth mode, and there was a lot of problems because I'd never gone from, we were going from making like 50 grand a month total in this 2 locations to like, we had to make 150 grand a month total in 2 locations to not go bankrupt. So there was all these mistakes we were making, and we
So
were.
what that? Why do you have to go from 50 to 100?
Because rent's expensive, and to build a climbing wall in a building is like $2 million.
To do a TI.
Yeah, the TIs are, yeah.
So what was the second location? You had the one in Slough.
We had the one in
and
Santa Maria.
it's
And
still the
Santa
one
Maria
in
was
Santa
still a home build, so it wasn't as
Okay.
expensive. But we now like contract with this amazing company, but they're in Bulgaria, and they like ship. They make the walls into like Lego. It's like Legos. They like put them into pieces, and they're all numbered up, and then they ship them across the country or like across the world,
Yeah.
and then they ship Bulgarians to install them. And so it's like millions of dollars to do this thing. It is. It's really, and they're amazing. They're like the sweetest
But it's
people.
nice. It's like not IKEA. Like here it is. You
Oh,
figure it out.
and they figure stuff out. I mean,
They do
they're
it for you. That's
like
great.
stuff like the measurements won't be right because obviously they're literally putting a Lego thing in a building and like, oh no, like there's this, we didn't have that in the spec. Well, they'll just like whatever they need to do, MacGyver it so that it's good, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Shoot, I forgot what the point was.
So
Oh, the growth.
Why do you have to go from 50 to 150?
So,
There's
yeah.
TIs,
So like, and like,
improvements,
you know, there's inefficiency in who we have, and like we didn't know what we were doing. And we didn't charge enough because we didn't want to jump from our nonprofit price to, so we were actually like not doing well. And but at the same time, we had people that wanted us to grow more. So we had amassed some investment money. And so what happened basically is I have this headquarters because we have multiple locations, so each one has their own entity. And we have the headquarters. And when COVID hit, everyone kept saying like a month before it, I was saying in January, like something's wrong because the numbers are going down and this is our peak month. And I was like, whatever, Kristin, whatever. And it was, everyone was ill. I found out in the hindsight,
It is
like,
so true. So I remember like a few of us were super sick in January,
Yeah.
like crazy sick, like just I'd never.
Yeah, nobody
and
like, it
we were
wasn't
like,
even
"Oh, it's a
raining.
bad cold. Like,
Yeah, and like
it worked
I
out.
heard about how like football coaches here were canceling practices because there's too many, and football coaches don't cancel stuff. So I was like, something's wrong. And then we started hearing like, what's going to happen if COVID hits and you have to shut down? I was like, well, that's kind of like what happens if there's a war. Like it's going to affect everybody, so we'll figure it out. So obviously everybody got shut down for that month. And it was panic city for me because like our house is on the line for business, for loans, and like, you know, I don't know what's next. And I kind of take everything really personally. And like, I didn't want to fire all my employees, and I didn't, you know, like a lot of people just X'd everything and quit. So, but we're kind of like growth mindset. So we're like, no, look, like when this happens, we're going to go down until we have no money left, and then we'll all go down. So my full-time employees we retained through the entire time of COVID. And that was like the best decision I could have made because I had the ability to spend time researching stuff, and we had the like how to deal with COVID. And I had the time to like start to innovate these processes that were all broken. So it was like a pause on a bad business model that we had, where we were able to get like a good bookkeeper together who put all the stuff and like put it into order and got me on the right thing. We built this amazing software system. We said like we weren't hiring well, so we built a hiring software. You know, we did all this stuff. We like revamped our locations. We did everything we could. And like,
so you worked on the business.
we
like,
worked
you
on the
took it as a
business,
time to-
but I would have gone bankrupt if it wasn't for the fact that I was, again, I had the time to find out when that application was opening and was there at like Cal Poly back in the day when there was no computer system or whatever. At Cal Poly, you'd have to get up at like 6 a.m. and dial a phone number. I was like that person. Like I was there on the day, like I win those radio things. So I got my thing in, and we were one of the first companies to get actual money in San Luis Obispo. And we got a lot. It was before they like shut it all down. So we got enough to sustain ourselves. And then we also had
PPP loads and the IPOs
and we got all that stuff. So we were able to sustain ourselves, and my employees were, everybody took a hit. We all like shrunk our salaries so we could make it. And everybody in HQ went, you know, like in slow, I always say we were closed for 14 months and hobbled for hobbled for an additional 4. So, you know, they'd open us and then close us and then open us and close us. So our HQ people were all the front desk people. So like, it didn't matter if you were a graphic designer, you were going to work front desk for the month that we were open, because we just couldn't sustain it any other way. And it really built a beautiful team. And they're all still with us, unless like one, like my graphic designer went off to become the senior designer for Mattel, making cars. Like it's fine, leave, you know, that's all right.
Good opportunity.
But like it was major struggle bus, and I wasn't sure how we were going to get out of it. And then the EIDL loan came through, and I really think the vision that the legislators had when they put it together, and I always wondered about this, and I was so happy I got to go to DC last year and meet the people that put it together and shake their hand, because the EIDL loan was smart, and everybody talked about it on the internet, and they're like, they're just throwing money at companies. But when you said like all the gyms went out, poorly run businesses went out, or people who didn't have support went out. But I went around and slow and told everybody how to get this thing, and I maintained it for the industry, and I had this doc about like, this is where it is in customer service. And almost nobody in my industry went out because of COVID. And if they did, it was because they just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, you became I know you became kind of the spokesperson for all climbing gyms for like
in California.
To go to, like if there was a question with COVID, like you became the spokesperson.
And to the point where I was like, this is insane, because there's studies that came out because scientists got laid off for a minute and were bored and they were climbers, that chalk killed the virus. So we were getting affected by these shutdowns, but our buildings are huge and they have these enormous fans with the air circulation is important because we have all this chalk, right? And so we were like the perfect place to go inside during COVID. And so I ended up with a friend of mine who also has a small business, who also is a woman owner. And so we're in minorities in our industry. We ended up like forming a coalition of climbing gyms in California, there's big chains in California, and they didn't do it. And I couldn't believe they weren't. But we formed a coalition, hired a lobbyist. I like got to see behind the scenes. I got to be really mad at all of our representatives because a lot of their stuff was performative. I knew about it before them. I'd be like calling the health care department and stuff like that and being like, by the way, they're going to close on Wednesday. I knew this stuff because of my lobbyist. It was insane. And like, it didn't help. But what did help is I did finally get to meet with Dr. Erica Pon, who was like in charge of the whole thing. And she was like, hey, look, you have a good case, but if we do this, we have to do it for everybody. And I was like, it was a great instruction in government, right? Like you really do have to hit the widest swath and it doesn't matter. And so then I was able to like relax into that and be like, all right, now what's the next thing? And so like we saved ourselves that way. But like the idle thing set us up. We were able to refinance our expensive loan that we had with all these TIs. So now I have 30 years to pay it. And that was, and so like now our like really tight budget, because we made mistakes, suddenly opened up. And now it's the first, like after COVID. So like in a lot of ways for us, even though I am now gray and I'm pretty sure I'm going to die much earlier, and I was like crying all the time and I was really stressed out, for us, because I had the ability, because I had these other people doing stuff to support us, and my husband took our kids so I could figure all this out, and like went around and did stuff, and I just worked like 80-hour weeks figuring this out. But so I'm not saying that this is like casual, but Idle did what it was supposed to do, which is it like bolstered the companies that they didn't want us to all go bankrupt and then us end up on that. And it did that to the point where now I'm like better off than I started, which is amazing.
It's insane. Yeah, it's completely insane. And so coming out of COVID, back up and running full time. And so now like you had time so were you already building your strategy for growth?
There's no strategy, my friend. Right? Oh no, no.
Because now you're in full growth mode again.
Yes, we are.
So was that something you were thinking of?
No.
Like, when I get to COVID, I want to do this.
Right before we went into COVID, we are literally about to sign a lease on a commercial location in Santa Barbara. We are working on trying to go down there for like 10 years. There's a gym there. We wanted to build a gym there 10 years ago. There were no good locations for us. Ironically, a place we rejected became a climbing gym there. But the community keeps saying like, we want what you have, not what they have. So we were like, okay, fine. So we almost signed a lease and everything happened and we quit. And while we're doing it, we're still looking because we have investors, right, who didn't care, who still have their money. They're not the rest of us that are all affected by this stuff. So we're still looking and we're talking to developers and we like get another lease. And then that guy's like, the permitting was really, Santa Barbara's notorious. Like literally they all have to look the same and they have this horrible architectural review that takes like it took us 9 months to get through their approval. Like they'd be like, the brown isn't right, come back in a month. And I'm like, just tell us what brown, like put it on. And like we had a planter and like there was like an agave in it. They're like, that's too spiky, come back in a month. And so it was like, we had people like, even though we had a place, they'd be like, you know what, no. And we're like, okay, fine. So we finally have a location now and we finally got our permit and it's been 2.5 years. We just got it like this week.
Congrats.
It's a little bit exciting. But so we have been doing that the whole time.
Yeah.
And then, so that was like just something we were stuck doing. And again, like I said, like this pot is affected by this is not. Yeah. And then I'd been casually kind of looking in my parents' hometown, and it's back in New York, just because like, you get exposed to something and you're like, man, like this kind of fits what we're looking for. And like, I have all of my cousins and everybody still lives there. Yeah. So I would go back, we went back in 2020 and I brought my husband because why would I ever take him back to this like little podunk? He loves adventure. He likes like athletic stuff. He comes there and he's like, I love it and I want to move here. And I was like, what? Like, you want to go to like a chill place where there's not like all this like excitement? Yeah. I was like, what? So he, on our vacation, goes to the Economic Development Center and they say, actually, we did a survey and the number one thing we want is a climbing gym. And we're like, what? And then we get a real estate agent who's totally best friends with my aunt, who knows? But nothing comes up because it's all based on locations. You need to have these huge like buildings, and you ideally don't have to raise the roof on them because that's millions. And it's really sad. So here we go with the, oh, I'm sorry, but you don't have to. Both my parents died in the last year. So my dad died in September suddenly, and 2 weeks later, the real estate agent calls and is like, we have a building. And like 2 weeks later, I do a lot of like free consulting for my industry, or like VCs call me to ask about what stuff. And all these people on the East Coast are like, would you be interested in could we invest in you? I was like, maybe. And then all of a sudden, the two things came together at the same time. So we're like, okay. So we signed the lease, and this entire community like blew up. My cousin is our like project manager, and he's like all invested in it. And I have all these like family members I don't even know existing coming out and giving us money for it. And that's crazy. And we're publicly talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And so like that, and that permit, by the way, it was over the counter. It cost us $20.
Wow.
So when you go to California, people tell you New York is expensive. Not New York City is, but New York, like backwoods and like everybody's family. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. So, and like, it'll probably be our highest profit generation because you still have to put in $1 million walls, but like the rent is cheaper, the labor is cheaper, the permitting process is easier. Like
so this happened just this past fall, so 6 months ago, basically.
6 months ago. And then because we were public about it, then we had a guy who has a ton of money who doesn't like our Las Vegas location. We don't like it either. Who's like, hey, I got a bunch of money and I want you to.
Las Vegas
Oh, in 2019, we acquired it.
Okay.
And that was great for COVID.
That was, okay.
And by that I'm being sarcastic, it was not.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like our Las Vegas location. It's the best gym in Las Vegas, but it's not great. And he was like, what if I give you enough money that you can build this company the way it should be? And we'll build the Vegas location, a better one. And I was like, I don't know, because that's a different change. That's this guy, we're going to sell the majority shares to this man who's going to give me more money than I've ever seen in my entire life. Who is he? And we had to go around to all of our networked people and talk to all these people. And they were like, no, you should do it. So we're in a new phase where I suddenly, for the first time in my life, am not bootstrapped. And it's like a weird blessing where it's like my parents died and all of a sudden this stuff came together in their hometown. And then because of that, this guy came and was like, oh, by the way, I also have more investors.
So this guy's in New York.
So
he thought you were doing New York.
No, he's a Las Vegas guy who wants a better gym, but he saw us posting about what we were doing and that kind of stuff. And he's like,
do that here.
No, but he wants us to go big. So I now have enough money that we can become a gympire if we want to. And I don't know what, and I'm like, it's extremely scary. And like I hired 2 people that are way above my pay grade, like a CFO on the East Coast, who she teaches at Boston University and she handles like Fortune 500, like advisory stuff. And then I hired my tech lady, and both of them are just like putting me through the runner where they're like, this is how you're supposed to do things. And like, you need to get out of the day to day. And like, this is how we need to think about the future now and what our plans are. And we're going to get through the 6 months of construction for opening 3 different locations. But in this vibe, we're going to have to go find out what we're going to do next, which is crazy. Did I want to do that? No, but all of my employees really want a career path. It's really interesting, like to watch this change. I had to resign from a couple small business things because I was no longer like small business for their qualifications, so I can't do advisory stuff for them anymore.
Because you're part of the small business.
I was part of the small business majority. And I don't qualify for it anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, so how do you see, like, what's the business model? Is it eventually?
It's not a franchise. No, there's one model that's franchise and they do okay, but that's not, we want a hand in it. We care about it. Like my head setter is like terrified about hiring these people because he doesn't know if the quality is going to be what he wants it to be. And like we have a certain character, we have a certain vibe we want to give off when we go to these places, and we pick these places because it's the place that will receive what we're doing. And I don't want to just be like, anybody can have this and here's a pattern. And we want it to be like feelings. So that, and then everybody's asking like, what's your exit strategy? Because again, if you go to B school, there's exit strategies. And I had to like tell people interviewing me for this position, like that they were like, well, what's your exit strategy? I'm like, because there are VCs that will buy us. I don't know that that's what we want to do. I don't know what the build, and these new people that I brought on are theoretically going to push us wherever we want to go. And like one of them is from my hometown and she's like, we're going to build one here. And I'm like, okay, fine, but we'll deal with that in a minute.
So Kristin, God, I mean, like, how many? I mean, I'm glad we're catching up. It's been overdue.
It's a lot.
Impressed. I mean, I was already impressed, but now I'm even more impressed.
Oh, that's what I live for.
But how many employees do you have now?
We're coming up pretty close to 100, so we're operating as if we are.
Good.
There's like each location has 35 employees
Yeah.
plus HQ. So by the end of the year, we're probably going to double that, which is crazy.
Wow.
And it's all like remote managed and stuff, which is
That's
its own adventure.
crazy. Okay, so that's what I definitely want to talk about, remote managed.
Mhm.
How do you manage that? Like, what are
Well, for when
like,
I'm,
what are the best practices? How do you make it
Ooh.
work? How do you make people feel as they're part of the team? Like, what are all the things that you do to make that work?
well, for one, I'm really big on automation. We have software called Asana, and most people use it as a to-do list, but we use it as like everything. It drives our metrics. We process employees through it. We like even like, like employee change file, like if someone's pregnant, we put them through there. And it's all automated because one of the things that's really important to me is that full-time for us is like 35 hours a week or less because we're all climbers, or if we're not climbers, I like my entire agency went from being like all men to being women that stay at home with their kids. And like, man, I get these like 2 o'clock in the morning, like emails and stuff. And like, it's great. Like they're just doing it when they can. So like the secret to that for one is that I get high quality people. Like the reason why I'm getting the people I'm getting is because a lot of them are like, I don't want to grind and go into an office and then like have to show up or put makeup on or anything. I just want to get the job done. So like if you think about remote work that way, that's the first best practice. And we always say like when we think someone's not a great hire, it's because they don't appreciate what we're offering them. And like if we have to remind them or they've never worked anywhere else, but everybody who comes into us from a different perspective loves that. So I think that's a piece of it. You have to hire people you trust. If you start to have like any kind of sense about, oh, this isn't feeling good, we can let it go for way too long because we're like, oh, they're missing deadlines. And like, what about this project that I want them to do? And like, if they start to like not be responsive, you have to be at it. You cannot. Now, if they're getting sick and stuff like that, that's one thing I will say is that we like have unlimited leave. So I had like one of my main people had to be gone for 2 months. Her kid got sick, she got sick, and like we all just figured it out. And every time we do that, the cool thing about remote work is that you can slide into somebody else's job. So like when she had her job, I got to reform a lot of processes because I was holding her job for her. And then like our HR guy quit. And I was like, I don't want to hire someone right away because we're about to scale and I want to make sure the system's good. So I went in there and looked at everything and then I was able to reform it. And so like being able to see your whole system in one place and be able to have that accountability where it's like everybody's on Google Drive and everybody's in Asana and nobody's like emailing each other. We don't do like Slack or anything like that because I don't want to have like that distraction.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You don't do Slack, you don't
No.
do emails?
No,
How
it's
do you guys
all
communicate all through the
it's all through Asana. So you're required to not have it on your phone and you're required to not
Wow.
you can't you have to message each other through this, and if it isn't in writing, it isn't accountable. So
Okay, that I'm blown away.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like yeah. Well,
I read a lot
mean,
of business books and get like 1 or 2 ideas periodically. So
no, but just hang on. How do you get the idea of no emails, no?
because people need boundaries. Like I would
Yeah.
work 24/7 and like, we have a 24-hour gym and we were always worried that at 2 o'clock in the morning, someone would get hurt and we'd get the call. Well, in 20 years, that's never happened, but we have gotten like calls for cancellations at like midnight because they think it's a voicemail. So I started to be like, look, like, and I probably have ADD. I'm not like, but I probably do.
Yeah.
And like when I see that thing blink, I like get distracted from the deep work that I need to be doing. And especially as we hire younger generations, they don't know how to have those boundaries. And then they get like stressed out and they're creating their own burden. So we were like, look, like keep it all in Asana and like even our front desk employees.
Like, okay, I'm working right now, so I go into Asana.
Yeah, you go into it, you manage your
into my
time within
work,
that.
but I'm not
You're
getting
not,
bombarded all the
yeah.
time.
And like even our front desk employees, we don't email them about stuff or anything like that. It's all in Asana so that when they log in first thing in the morning, they're able to see all that and they're on the clock. Yeah, because like the new generation, right, is like, I don't want to be exploited. I want my free time. I want whatever. And so I'm like, you better adapt to that and respect that because that's cool. Like I too would love it if my vacations didn't get ruined by problems happening, which they do because I'm the owner. But like if my like operations manager is out for the weekend, they should be out for the weekend. And so like that's that piece where like we have enough processes in place where the people who are at brick and mortar are going to react to that thing, but the rest of them like don't get bothered with it because there's literally nothing life and death except for what's happening in the gym if someone's injured. And then that's a different process.
That's the only urgency.
That is literally, COVID taught me that one too, especially like I was so stressed out like 24/7, like I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to manage this. I have people, they're relying on me in their careers. and like all this stuff that I was like, dude, like in hindsight, I could have just chilled for 9 months and
Yeah.
not stressed out about that and not looked at the news.
Was the
and
unknown, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I think we were all, I mean, every
Well, it's
human.
not only that, but it's like you
It's like-
sit there and doom scroll and you're like,
Yeah.
and then I had to be attached to my phone because again, I wanted to know the day because they would just be like, today you can open, and like we had to scramble like brick and mortar people and like be all ready. So like I needed to know that moment so that we could scramble to activate, or like with all these floods and stuff.
Yeah.
Now we have these emergency procedures in place where it just automatically sends out a notice to everybody, tells
Yeah.
them when to close and all this stuff because
Yeah.
like it's too much emotional drain. And like that's my whole
Yeah.
thing is I'm literally going to die because of all the stress that happened before.
Yeah.
So now let's make it so nobody gets that. And so like I'm trying to model that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm I'm trying to process what you just said about your work processes with your kids. Like I'm super blown away. I'm like,
Thanks.
okay, we're gonna make some changes here. So let's see. Oh yeah. So now scaling kind of back a little bit. Well, let me ask you one other question first. How is there a limit to how big you want this to be? Like, or are you just like, no, growth all the way? Like,
It's not growth.
how, I mean, is it more just
Is it
opportunity
interesting?
at the right place, right time?
think-
Being open to that, but without this, this drive to growing just for the sake of growing. Like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes once you get pressure from investors, from things, you're like, okay, growth. Like I have to show like, the hockey stick,
Yeah. The reality, okay, because again, I didn't go to B school and this is all grown out of a hobby. So do I enjoy being like, oh my gosh, I have to work or I'm overwhelmed? No. But do I love life challenges? Yes. And like everyone's like, how do you do so much stuff? Because I like do a ton of other things on the side. And I say it's the trauma. My husband and I both like really have to achieve to feel good, which is something I'm working on. But for me, what was it? The guy that founded Blackstone wrote a book. I can't remember what his name is, but the one thing that I got out of it was like, it's easier to go big than it is to be small because the systems are all the same at that point. So, and for me, it's not money or we don't like, I literally like, I'm one of the very blessed in that like at 40, I'm 44. I basically have achieved everything I've ever wanted to. I've got my little farm that I want. I don't own it, but I like have my farm. In fact, I don't have to own it, which is great. I have a little family that's nice and I like can bike around and that's all I really want. And I don't want stuff and whatever. So everything else is kind of a surprise. And so this has been such a roller coaster. My whole life has been such a roller coaster. Like even me and my husband getting together was a roller coaster. That like, it's just an interesting, like, I don't know, where is this going to take me next? And so it's not really a growth hunger. So much as it's like when this guy calls up and is like, would you like enough money that you don't have to worry about money for a while? And I was like, I actually took my time because it wasn't like, yes, I've been wanting this whole time. Or like when a VC firm's like, do you want to get bought out? I'm like, I'll like, look at it, but, and then my employees will be like, please no, we like working for you. And so like, my dream is in like a couple of years, I don't have to be in the day-to-day stuff anymore. And I've hired these two people. Realistically, they both might be over it, but we'll be positioned so that my employees can step into those positions and have the careers they want. And like a lot of my moms that like are staying at home doing this stuff are like, well, in a couple of years, I'm going to be able to do more and I want to do more. So I'm kind of like more motivated by them and by the impact that we can have on things. So there's like some interesting business opportunities out there from some of these investors that are like, have you thought about this? That are like crazy. And like, it feels like, well, that would be an interesting thing to see how it goes. And
So
now
it's more
that
out of interest, curiosity.
it's just
supporting your people, creating this career path for them. So it's that genuine kind
and
of.
I'll like suffer fest for that for a bit, but at this point, I'm also like, I really need to enjoy my life. So it's not growth for growth's sake. I don't need to be a billionaire. I don't need to be like living in I have, investors that have 25,000 square foot houses and stuff. I don't need that. Like, in fact, I like don't like going there and feeling that way. So like, I'm a small town kid that like thinks it's funny that this is happening to me. And then the other thing is I like doing this kind of stuff because I really want to tell people it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to achieve, like, you don't have to like life hack to get what you want. It's either like a weird thing you have or like you should be happy. So
So on that note, like for someone who's in that early stage, just launched, about to launch, words of wisdom, things, what will you tell your 25-year-old self or your 30-year-old self?
The first thing I would say, and you're going to love this one, like lean on the SBDC. I knew you would.
Great.
I could not, we were like, everyone's like, you need to hire more consultants. Like, and honestly, that is true. And I hate that I say that because a lot of consultants I run into in my industry are terrible. Like they're guys that like, I think I can make money this way, but they don't have the experience. And now that I've been in it for 20 years, I have too much experience for that. But like when you find a good consultant that just like says something to you, you need to hear, that's worth the money. Or like you like spend the money there, that's really important. But when you're starting out, you can't. And like when we were like in like major panic mode when I came to you and you gave us like literally a guy I used to work for and like, you know, and an executive coach who literally is like, maybe you should think about how you're going to calm yourself down. Like that stuff is so important at that beginning stage because like I spent basically 5 years stressed out and making tons of mistakes. And it wasn't until I finally knew I had a partner where we didn't have the money. I didn't personally have the money. We couldn't, you guys like literally allowed me to do this. And I think that's really important for anyone starting out that you should, I've told people like whatever you're doing, you should go to Small Business Development Center. Like you want to navigate the loans, this is literally what they'll do too. You don't like, I had the freedom to do it, but they will help you, you know? So that's my advice. I know she didn't, but it's true. So.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Because like now I can afford fancy advisors that are like my employees and they are like, I brought them on in May and they are changing everything and like changing how I see stuff and like changing how I see myself. And like, I could not have bought them before, but I had access to those people here.
Well, Well, thanks for that. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Anything that you would have done differently? Anything looking back or like, you know what, I could have, but you know, I learned from that and it's okay.
I mean, like Google me and you'll find some tragedies tied to us, right? And the business. And the thing, I like went through a lot of PTSD therapy for a lot of stuff that had happened to us. And it happened to me that I took personally that I realized. But the hindsight is not that there's a regret because I can't say that I didn't do my damn best in the moment. And that not everybody, you know, external people will say something like, you should have done this or whatever. But the reality is nobody knows you. And whenever I see stuff on the news, when people are immediately quick to jump on someone or like report something or whatever, those people like enjoy being like armchair jockeys or whatever, but they don't know what's really behind the scene. And if you're being professional and you're being respectful of other people, you're not going to be sharing all your dirty laundry. So like, I think I don't have regrets about a single thing I've done. I just, like I said, I, you know, like when we transitioned from nonprofit to for-profit and we had that kind of money that I had to be responsible for suddenly, I knew I was going to mess up. I literally was like, I don't know how to hire. I don't know how to put these systems together. Like we didn't, like when we first started running, when we first hired employees in nonprofit, we didn't know about workers' comp. We went for like 3 years without workers' comp because we didn't know it existed. So, but like, you know what, like now, like if we make a mistake, I know for one, I know that if the IRS does come, it's like 1% and they're cool. They don't want to hurt you, you know, and like nobody is actually coming to get you. And like everybody, like you are such small potatoes for them. And if you're not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter. So like take the risk and make some mistakes. And so I don't have that kind of regret for anything, even though I want to acknowledge that a lot of really tough things have happened in the community around us. So,
that's pretty amazing. Any questions from the audience? Does anyone want to jump in with questions or online messages or anything? No? Yeah, here, let me send the catch box. Are you ready to catch?
That's pressure. What if you dump it? It's embarrassing.
If you don't catch, you just leave.
Yeah, I think I just drop it on the ground and walk.
So I'm in workforce development with SLO County.
Awesome.
And we're always trying to kind of figure out what like business needs are. And sometimes it can feel like, cause we're kind of like leverage like federal dollars to try and help. And sometimes it can feel like we're a little bit off to the side and we don't actually quite know like but it sounds like, you know, you like just from your presentation, like you've really been in the trenches. And so I was asking you, like, is there any advice you would give, like what are the real business needs in this community right now? And what would be like, would it be kind of getting more into automation or what
part of workforce development are you doing? Are you doing entry level or are you
basically like the issue in this community is you have this chasm between like cost of living and then jobs. So I mean, I see, you know, $25 an hour it's like, what? Like, you know, so there's this issue in terms of the sustainability of this community and, you know, that's kind of the big one in terms of looking like 5-10 years out, like
Yes.
what's going to happen? Like
Yeah.
it's going to be a retirement community, you know? So I guess, but as someone who's kind of made it in
Air
this
quote, yeah.
community,
Yeah.
like what in terms of like I guess just anything, like in terms of like a governmental force like us that can leverage dollars for upskilling, for
Thank you for asking me, because this is a passion thing of me. Like, I'm part of the SLO County YIMBY for this reason too. Because like I live in a house that tripled its value and I could not buy now today.
Yeah.
And I have employees leaving. Part of the reason why we're remote is a bunch of my employees couldn't sustain it here and had to move.
Yeah.
And like I have ones that are looking at relocating to New York because they're like, you can buy a house in New York for $100,000.
Wow.
And and like with a pond,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, like lifestyle wise. The issue I would like, because so you are looking at like maybe like 24-year-old, not necessarily like early career. Because I feel like high school kids will always be able to find a job as long as they're here. We end up with, you know, the post-high school a lot of times. A lot of people aren't going to college that we end up with. And one of the things I've had to develop, and we're working on like launching finally, is like a leadership program, because they don't know not to like reply all, or they don't know how to pick up. Like we had this woman who just refused to pick up the phone to call vendors because they want to text or they want to email, but they don't want to have that interaction piece. So we're having to do things like basic stuff like that. Like soft skills.
Yeah.
Soft skills are like the number one thing. Like I've had situations where I'm just like, really? You didn't think that was a bad idea, but they don't know. And I think that that's one of so I'm workforce developing internally because they're not coming to us that way. Now, when you're getting into the other, once they're like out of entry level and they're into like management level, we still have trainings for them, because those people don't understand budgets. They don't understand how payroll works with companies. They don't understand, like I had somebody not putting weekly cash deposits down because they didn't realize it was important. There's just like, I don't know. I think people are starting with less responsibility in the new roles that they have. They don't get the higher responsibility. And I think the other thing is that TikTok's telling everybody that like you deserve a living wage for a minimum wage. But what I've been starting to tell everybody is, look, like we have like wage laddering, and like when you're starting at minimum wage, you know, it's $16.50 right now. That's a training wage, and we expect to have to train you. And if you want 25 an hour, that means that I don't have to think about you, because your whole job is to do that. So you need to figure out what's going to get you to this level if you want air quote living wage, because 25 still isn't here really. And we're really clear about that. At one point we looked at like employee housing, but they don't want their boss to be their landlord.
Yeah.
So a lot of people in our community just live together. So I have like entire like houses full of climbing gym employees that hang out there. And then they actually stick around because they love this community, right? But and then I do the workforce development. So I'll be like, okay, now I spend a lot of time, well, that's just like psychological stuff. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm emotionally, you know, like I can't work because I'm sick today. And I was like, I had to give birth and then keep working. So like, I get that you're a little sick, but you're working from home on a computer. Please just do your job. So like, it's stuff like that. And also staying on TikTok, honestly, to hear what that narrative is so that you can counter it and train them through that. Because like, they're all getting their information from their peers who don't understand that stuff. But if I go onto TikTok, which by the way, I'm not, but if I go onto TikTok and say that, then I'm the man. And I think there's like this weird thing. So, I mean, like, I would love to work with you guys to do stuff because I think it's really important. The other thing is that one of the things that I never got taught, and I think it's really important that if you want to develop your workforce, it's use your job as a springboard for another job. I like, my dad was like blue collar in his mind, not in his work, but in his mind. So he was just like go hard work, do you pay your dues? And then again, like these people that I just hired, she's like, oh, she literally took my job because she wants skills in brick and mortar industry. And then she wants to become like a fitness investor. So she knows exactly, like, we're training her and she's training us. So it's like a mutual situation. And she got that because she got the start that taught her to do that. But nobody's telling us this here in SLO, right? You're basically like, live a good life and like work in the winery, and this is where you're stuck. And so I think that those, like, again, I think it's all soft skills and not necessarily anything else.
Great.
Does that help?
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Do we have, I think we're gonna wrap. I know we have a few slides to wrap with things coming up, but Kristin, this is so great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much
had
for
fun.
being here this morning.
Thanks for listening to me.
It's such a great story. It's so blown away. I hadn't completely caught up with you in
Oh, I know,
in a
right? Well, I'm
bit,
also
so-
not like, you know what, Judy, let me brag on all my stuff. You have to host me and make me do it for other people.
That was awesome.
Because I actually am like really shy about this kind of stuff. I don't want to be like, let me tell you how amazing I am. So,
Well, you're amazing, and this is such a good story. Thank you for being here.
my
Thanks for making
pleasure.
the time.
Thank you for
Seriously.
inviting. I was honored.
Yeah.
So.